أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المقتولين المهديين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من يومنا هذا إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقال الله تعالى في كتابه المجيد: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فلا وربك لا يؤمنون حتى يحكموك فيما شجر بينهم ثم لا يجدوا في أنفسهم حرجا مما قضيت ويسلموا تسليما. آمين. اللهم صل على. As we enter into the beginning of Safar, we're reminded that these are Ayam Zainabiyya, Salamullahi alayha, and these are extremely torturous days for the Banat of Ali Muhammad, Salamullahi alayhim ajma'een. And I wanted to narrate a poem, begin with a poem from Sheikh Hadi Kashif al-Ghata, describing the situation of Sayyidah Zainab, where he says, Maglulatul Aidi al-Aidi ila al-A'naq, describing Sayyidah Zainab that her hands are tied to the neck. Sheikh Hadi Kashif al-Ghata was a great marja, a great scholar. It's not, there's a very famous person who's writing this, very great marja, a great scholar. He says the hands are tied to the neck. وَتَصَبَّ عَلَى عَجَفٍ مِّن نِيَاكٍ, being herded on an emaciated camel. Being herded from place to place, pushed from place to place, taken captive on an emaciated camel, so a skinny camel. حَاصِرَةُ الْوَجْهِ بِغَيْرِ بُرْقَةٍ, with her face uncovered, without any veil. لَا سِتَرٌ غَيْرُ سَاعِدٍ وَأَذْرَعٍ, with nothing to shield herself except her forearm and her shoulder. Nothing to shield her face. قَدْ تَرَكَتْ عَزِيزَهَا عَلَى الْثَرَى, and she left her beloved there on the ground. وَخَلَفَتْهُ فِي الْحَجِيرِ وَالْعَرَى, and she left him behind in the midday heat, in the hajir, wal-ara, in such a state. Don't even want to translate that. إِن نَظَرَتْ لَهَا الْعُيُونُ وَلَوْلَاتْ, that if the eyes had seen her, they would say, wa wayla. O nadarat ila ru'us a'walat, and if they had seen the heads, they would be in a state of torment. Wa tawaddu an jismuha maqbur, she would only wish that her body would be buried there. وَلَا يَرَاهَا أَشَامَةَ الْكُفُورِ, and these evil people with evil in their hearts, these malicious people, would not have never seen her, meaning seen her face, because all she had was her hand to cover her. Abdul Razak al-Mukarram narrates something very interesting about this poem. He says, after the line where it states, and she wishes that she was buried, he says that there were two lines added to this. And he's narrating from Sheikh Hadi Kashif al-Ghata, where Sheikh Hadi, rahimahullah, he says that in the miswada, in the rough draft, I had not included the two lines. But when I went to the final draft, the final copy, there was something added to the poem. Ajib. وهي بأسطار من الأنوار تحجبها عن أعين النظار. That she's veiled, she's covered by lights, veiling her from the eyes of the onlookers. So Sheikh Hadi says, as Abdul Razak al-Muqarram narrates, Alama al-Muqarram, he says that we understand who added these lines. He says, لا غرابة من الحجة المنتظر. It is not strange for it to be from Al-Hujjah al-Muntadhar, who has added these lines to the poem. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. فَعَلِمَ أَنَّهُ شَيْءٌ غَيْبِي. For we know this is a ghaybi affair, this is a matter of the unseen. That the Hujjah came and added these two words, this one line, such that it was not found in the rough draft, but found in the final copy, which the author himself didn't even know where the lines came from. These are the days of Sayyidah Zainab Salamullahi alayha. And the verse I began with from Surah An-Nisa reminds us of that relationship between the non-Masum and the Masum. The relationship she had with her brother and the relationship that all non-Masum have with the Masum, with the Imam of their time. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the relationship, the ideal relationship with the Prophet. Where He says, by your Lord, they shall not believe. La yu'minun. They shall not believe. Why? حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِي مَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ. Until you become a judge, until you rule between them about what they disagree among one another. That you have to become the source of their judgments. They shall not believe until they accept you as their judge. ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ. And then they find no difficulty in themselves to accept what you've ruled. That is not enough for them to say that they accept, but within themselves they should not find any difficulty. Within their hearts there should not be any tension in accepting the judgment of the Prophet. وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. And they submit completely to him, to the Prophet. And taslim to him. And then they shall be among the mu'minun. Then and only then. Such that Imam as-Sadiq salamullahi alayhi in explaining this verse, he says that if when we hear a judgment of the Prophet, a ruling of the Prophet, and by extension, of course, any Ma'asum, because we don't distinguish between the qawl of any Ma'asum. And the individual who's hearing this, listening to this, finds themselves uneasy with what they know to be true. They find themselves uneasy, unable to accept it within their hearts. You should know that then the Imam says that this is a form of polytheism. Subtle polytheism. Shirk al-khafi. If they even find uneasiness in their hearts, can you imagine? Because we are required to submit to him. And now I'll stop here. I don't have much time tonight, unfortunately. It's just time is running out. There's very little time left. But when I say these sorts of things, or when I narrate these ayat and these ahadith and things like this, why are these sorts of traditions and these sorts of commandments, so to speak, why do they fall on deaf ears sometimes? For some people within this modern, so-called advanced society. Why might some people find this kind of words, this kind of rhetoric outdated? Not with our times. I realize this is a provocative question. And the answer to that question comes down to what our hearts consume. We are the product of what our hearts consume. We read in a supplication of Imam Zayn al-Abidin where he says, Allahumma ashrab qulubana inkar amala. That, oh Allah, let our hearts be consumed with the rejection of Satan's acts. That our hearts are consumed with rejecting everything that Satan and his awliya and his armies bring forth towards us. Their temptations, their ideas, their concepts, whether it be in physical form or intellectual form. Let our hearts be consumed or consume the rejection of these concepts, the rejection of the acts of shaitan. Meaning, let our hearts be consumed with accepting everything that comes from the divine source, not from shaitan. We are what we love at the end of the day. And often, parents or youngsters or whoever will come to me and say, but we don't find we're progressing. And often I would turn to them and I would say, well, what does your heart consume? That will determine who you are. We are what we consume. We are what we look at. We are what we read. We are what we watch. And if we're consumed day and night with all those things that take us away from a life of worship, a life of servitude, a life of humility, then how can this heart find room to submit to Rasulullah? It can't. That's a simple answer, with, of course, a profound foundation to it. The heart is what it is consumed by. It is what it's ensnared by. We can bring the best speaker we can find from the four corners of the world, we'll bring. And it ain't going to change anything. If the hearts consume what the hearts consume, kufr and ilhad and liberalism and atheism and all this filth and garbage, layla wa nahara, then ain't no Maulana or Marja or great scholar, may Allah raise all their ranks, going to change people. It requires a change within ourselves. That's what the Imam is telling us. And it brings us back to this ayah from Surah Al-Baqarah with regards to Bani Israel. وَأُشْرِبُوا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ الْعِجْلَ بِكُفْرِهِمْ. That their hearts were consumed by that calf. Their hearts were consumed by that cow. It was their hearts that worshipped the cow. You think they didn't know La ilaha illallah? They didn't know there was no God but God after seeing all the miracles that they saw? Being delivered out of Egypt? It wasn't necessarily an intellectual problem, meaning from a linear perspective. But their hearts were consumed with the worship of that cow. Because their hearts were not right. So if even this could happen to the followers of a Nabi, what about Marja, Ayatullah, Alim, Maulana? Each of us are responsible for our own heart at the end of the day. And not a prophet, not an imam can necessarily change that unless we change ourselves. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And this calf here represents the false promises. Today, this calf that was worshipped represents the false promises of modernity, the false promises of liberalism, the false promises of people who claim to be able to liberate us, to give us the freedom from religion, the freedom from God, the freedom from faith, the freedom from religious institutions. And it's so subtle. It's not always so straightforward. So if we immerse ourselves and our children in this kind of media and this kind of culture without knowing what they're interacting with, obviously their hearts will be affected by that. As John Medina writes in an interesting book called Brain Rules, he says, our brains are so sensitive to external inputs that their physical wiring depends on the culture in which they find themselves. That it affects the way our brain operates. And a little peppering of La ilaha illallah on top of things is not going to fix it. That's not going to fix it. It requires something within us to do inkar of what is of the munkar within our hearts. That when we see it with our eyes or we hear it with our ears, we reject it within ourselves. We're disgusted by it. We're repelled by it. We're rather, revolted by it. Don't have to say anything. But you know in your heart that it perturbs you. And if it doesn't, the answer is obvious. Someone else owns the heart now. Right? As we read in the traditions that the heart of insan becomes the ma'araka, the battlefield between the shayateen and the malaika. Either we do inkar of shaitan or iqbal of shaitan. Reject him or accept him. There's no wama baynahuma. And his awliya and his followers and his thoughts and his minions and his institutions. And there's no difference really. Okay, maybe there's just difference in intensity, but these challenges have been around since the beginning of time. Our hearts at the end of the day need to decide. We need to decide for ourselves. That when I see munkar, does my heart dislike it? Because for the first time in history, to a certain extent, humans do not have a purpose for their existence. They don't know why they're here. And many don't even care to know why they're here. Doesn't even matter. And for us, they say it's all about love. Love thy neighbor, love thy friend, love thy family, love thyself. For us, that's not the case. In kuntum tuhibbunallah fatabi'uni. If you love your Lord, then you submit to the Messenger of Allah. There's no going around that. There's no such thing as love thyself, love myself. Love our ego, our nafs. No. We only love those things that submit to the one who has created this love. But today we see something interesting. It's a new concept. Well, it's not new. It's been around for a while, since, probably since the Second World War and after. It's called moralistic therapeutic deism. What is this? I see this in the schools every day. I mean, not only in the school, I see this everywhere. It's this new kind of religion, because people are not becoming atheists per se. I mean, that exists a little bit, but if you take general surveys, most people believe in something. But what do they actually believe in? These are based on statistics here. They believe that God exists, created the world, right? When they go to Niagara Falls, they say, wow, yeah, okay, intelligent creator, probably there, yeah. God wants people to be nice, fair, as taught by the various books of the world, of world religions. Okay, no one's going to disagree with that, right? The central goal of life is to be happy and feel good about oneself. God does not need to be particularly involved in one's life except when he is needed to resolve a problem. And good people go to heaven when they die. We're all holding hands hunky-dory into the sunset here. Where's Nabuwa? Where's the figure of a salvational prophet? It's gone. And when you say, oh, well, this is not allowed because a prophet has said, they said, well, you know, Maulana, that doesn't make sense to me. Because it doesn't fit with your ego and your nafs. The whole point of this religion is to fight that ego, to overcome it, to conquer it, not to submit to it. No real spiritual program teaches to submit to what we love, to what our ego loves, to what the self loves. And that's what the Quran ultimately teaches us. And that's what made the ashab of Imam and Husayn so great. Because they were completely effaced in their submission to the Imam of their time. And that effacement and submission and intoxication in his love and obedience to him is what allowed this situation to occur. And what is that? As we read in the riwayah from Saduq's Alal, from I believe Imam al-Sadiq, where he says, why is it that they ran into the battlefield so fast? None of them complained or hesitated for the most part, at least as far as we read. And then they're reciting like this incredible poetry as they're going to fight. He says, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يعني كشف عنهم الغطاء, that the veil was lifted from them. And when they went out to fight, they saw their manazil and their positions and their stations in Jannah. They saw it before their eyes. They had the yaqeen in front of them as they went out to fight. Because of that submission to their Imam. As I said, that effacement, that completely, they obliterated their self in their Imam. It's not about whether I feel good or not. Our feelings don't factor in here. It doesn't factor in, brothers. That is the worship of the ego, of the self, of the nafs. And ultimately Satan himself. It's not about feeling good. There's a certain salt to worship. There's a certain bitterness at the beginning before you arrive at the sweetness of it. Problem is, nobody wants to taste any kind of bitterness. They just want enjoyment now. The problem is that they seek that enjoyment now and they never find any enjoyment ever. And they end up searching and just spinning their wheels in the sand their whole life. In the quicksand. Looking for happiness, searching for meaning, searching for purpose, searching for a sense of belonging, searching for a sense of contentment, searching for a sense of peace. Because they remove this divine guidance and revelation out of that picture. And they just said, you know, I'll go direct to God in my own way and love myself and be happy. And love everyone and everything around me, because life is about love and all kinds of beautiful colors. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. But for the mu'mineen, we don't lose hope. We do not lose hope. Even when things get more difficult, we remember that Rasulullah has warned us about all of this in his traditions. Don't have time to go into it, as we only had about 25 minutes today, 30 minutes. But Rasulullah has warned us so many times about this in his traditions, in his ahadith, that a time will come where this will happen. A time will come where munkar will be seen as ma'ruf and ma'ruf will be seen as munkar. He's told us this many times, over and over again. And he's given us very specific details of which we can't even relate here out of, fear of reprisal and fear of backlash. If we were to relate those details here, wow, there would be a lot of, maybe even in the Muslim community, there would people say, oh, Sheikh, come on, man. That's got to be politically correct. Got to play the game. Put on a smile. Prophet was not politically correct at all. At all. He was not politically correct. He said it as it is. And if you go and you read these traditions, for example, the ones in Makarim al-Akhlaq of Tabrasi, the long conversation with Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, you will see what the Prophet has said about the signs of the end of times. And the kinds of people and the kinds of things that will become prevalent in the Muslim Ummah and the community. We seek refuge in Allah from that, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. As we enter into this month, I want to remind us of a beautiful tradition. It's narrated in a book by Sayyid Qadim al-Qazwini, Sayyida Zainab min al-Mahad al-Lahad, from the cradle to the grave. It's a beautiful tradition where when she was born, Rasulullah took her and held her to his chest. وَوَضَعَ خَدَّهُ الْمُنِيفَ عَلَى خَدِّهَا, and he put his cheek to her cheek. فَبَكَى بُكَاءً هَارًا, and he started crying profusely, crying, until the tears reached his cheeks. Sayyidah Zahra turned to him and said, why are you crying, O father? He said, oh my daughter Fatima, know that this daughter after me and after you shall be inflicted with a calamity. تُبْطَلَى بِبَلَايَ فَادِحَةٍ, she shall have a devastating horror inflicted upon her. عَلَيْهَا مَصَائِبُ وَالرَّزَايَا مُفَجَّعَةٍ, she shall have a devastating horror. Sayyidah Zahra began to cry. She says, oh my father, what is the reward for the one who cries for her? And on her musibah, what is the thawab? What is the reward? فَقَالَ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ, he says to her, give glad tidings to her lovers. Ya bid'ati wa qurrata aini, oh the apple of my eye, know that the one who cries over her and on her masa'ib, كَانَ ثَوَابُ بُكَائِهِ كَثَوَابْ مَنْ بَكَى عَلَى أَخَوَيْهَا, it is like the thawab of the one who cries over her two brothers, salamullahi alayhim. And we read on that day, as they cursed Husayn and they ran towards him to do what they wanted to do to him, Zainab came out of her tent. What happened on that day? خرجت زينب من الفسطاط. Zainab comes out. Shall we relate now what happened when Zainab comes out? Husayn is on the ground. And the riwayah states that she comes up to Umar ibn Sa'ad and she says, Ya Umar ibn Sa'ad, shall my brother Abu Abdullah be killed wa anta tanzuru ilay, and you will be watching him while you kill him, while he is killed? Umar ibn Sa'ad la'anahullah turns his face away from her. And it is narrated from the reporter that it is as if I could see tears coming down the face of Umar ibn Sa'ad, because he could not look at Sayyidah Zainab in the eyes. He could not look at her when she said, will you watch as my brother is killed? Will you watch what they are about to do to my brother? And then we read in the traditions that after he is killed, she comes out saying, Watanadi wa akha wa akha. And it's narrated by Sayyid Kadhim Kazwini and others that in the midst of the fire, Hamid bin Muslim relates that she saw Sayyidah Zainab run into one of the tents. He was shocked. The tents are on fire, as you know, and there she was dragging out the body of Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. Can you imagine everything that she's been through? Their clothes are on fire, or at least were burned. Their tents are burned. Their earrings are taken from their ears. Their bangles are taken from their ankles and their hands. And she's dragging her nephew out of a burning tent to keep him alive. Who was this woman, Sayyidah Zainab Salamullahi alayha? What was her courage? What was her strength? And that is why the Prophet tells us that the one who cries over her and over her masa'ib has the reward of the one who weeps over her two brothers. Ala la'natullahi ala qawmi dhalimin. Matam Husayn.